Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. It's Kayani from Inventive Mind, and I'm here with another interview today. And before we get started, if you haven't listened to my channel before, welcome. If you have listened, welcome. I am glad you're joining us. And this is, my channel. I try to put out material for creatives, inventors, entrepreneurs, small businesses out there. And also one of my passions is wine. Part of it is because I do want to be a winery owner someday. So I've been like, this is my research projects kind of path to this discussion. So, and this channel, I also have videos about trademarks, copyright patents, and how to create your what you need to think about when you're creating a business. So all of those videos, there's bite-sized videos. Those are under 10 minutes, and the interviews are longer. They are about 30 plus minutes sometimes. So keep that in mind, and it's for all educational purposes, because as an attorney, I had to put that disclaimer out there. I practice in California, and I help clients all over the world who want to get trademarks, copyrights in US. And I do patent strategy. So my contact information will be below too. But today I have a really special guest, so Sonja Magdevski. I think my name is hard, and then I try to pronounce other people's names, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's fair game. So I actually met Sonja because I went to a virtual event like a week ago. At a different virtual event Splash Wine Lounge was having. And she had this amazing label called Feminist Party Wine. And it's a really cool label. And her story is very, it's inspirational. And I loved hearing about it. And, these amazing female entrepreneurs out there who are doing their thing. It's always inspirational to me. So I asked her if we could do an interview and kind of share her journey. How did she go from being a journalist to becoming a winery owner, having 3 different labels. Casa Dumetz is one of the main where is umbrella label. And then this one, and then there's, I think, the Clementine label. So we will get into all of that. So stay tuned. And as always, thank you for joining. Thank you, Sonja, for joining me. Please, did I say your name right?
You were perfect. It was great. It was awesome. Yes. Sonja Magdevski, correct.
Yes. And so I saw that, I'm guessing did you grew up in Michigan, because you went to Michigan State and you had a lot of roots in Michigan, it looked like. And you have a journalism degree, and then you had a Fulbright scholarship to Macedonia to learn about ethnic issues. So I wanted to kind of talk about, how did you go from being a journalist, and where did you start, and how was it like, and how we come to this point now?
Well, I love, first of all, thank you for having me. This is adorable. You're adorable. And your work is so valuable and important. I've had to use trademark attorneys for the Feminist Party and Feminist Party and everything else. So it's...
Yeah, you definitely want to do.
Yeah, because it's complicated. So, you knowing the ins and outs of that world is very, very valuable. So thank you for your work. Yeah, I've always been extraordinarily curious. I mean, since I was a tiny, tiny human, just always aware of things happening, always wanting to understand the why and the how and the reasoning and analyzing. And so that's where journalism came into play. One of the things that I thought was so fascinating when I actually realized in high school that journalism was a profession was that you could call people and you could ask them questions and then they would answer them. I mean, that to me was a huge surprise. I thought, wow, you're just going to answer my questions. You don't even know who I am, or, all of those things. And that was a really beautiful interaction to sort of gain knowledge and understanding. And that seems like it's not a very direct segue to winemaking, but that need to sort of seek knowledge and understanding is a direct correlation, albeit a little wavy one, to wine, when I actually sort of became involved in it, because it is the idea of understanding the foundation and then always asking questions and sort of how to improve the product, how to be more mindful in the farming, how to create a beautiful product to share with others. What does marketing do? You know, the challenges are extreme, and so it's been really exciting. So there is a connection for sure.
Did you grow up in Michigan? No, is that?
I did. I was born and raised in Michigan, and so I'm first generation born in the States, and my whole family is from. At the time when they came to the States, my great grandfather came in the 40s, and then my parents came with my grandparents in the late 60s. They were it was Yugoslavia, and then the country fell apart, and so now the country is called North Macedonia. So yeah, so that's where they came from. So I'm first generation born and raised in the States. First to go to college, you know, all of those things. It's a very standard kind of immigrant story, you know.
No, it's not. I don't think, you know, I think the immigrant stories are very much, I love hearing them because all of us have these, and we have a lot of things that are in common, and there's a lot of different challenges we went through that are unique. And I think it shapes who we are, you know, and totally. I think it's so valuable, especially I do find being an entrepreneur, I think there's your genes for taking risk are like pretty strong if you're like from an immigration background.
Totally. To think about what, you know, I don't know what your background is, but to think about what my parents did, how they succeeded, not knowing the language, working hard, like all of those things. And to think like, could I move to another country, do exactly what they did, not know the language, establish a life, and, you know, be successful? And that's, I honestly, I don't know.
And raise a family.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah.
So I moved here with my parents when I was 14 from Sri Lanka. Yeah. So I was actually a teen already. I just turned a teen when that happened. And that was very drastic, I had to say. But also it wasn't bad because I was excited because I was very close. I'm very close to my dad. Yeah. So, and he already moved here and we won the lottery visa. Yeah, so it's a very one of those, it's another time discussion for another time, but yeah, so it's very cool. And I was wondering, so how was it to go back as a Fulbright scholar to learn about the ethnic issues, like going back to search of your heritage, I guess? That's
one of the beautiful things and the greatest gifts, again, in terms of trying to understand how my family did it. You know, one of the greatest gifts that they gave me and my brother is that every year we would go back to visit Macedonia. Mm-hmm. So we'd spend 4, 6 weeks, 2 months, depending on the time frame. Every summer, the whole family would go. We'd see grandparents and aunts and uncles and culture and all of that stuff. So it was very close to me. It was very valuable. You know, at the time you think, oh, I don't want to leave my friends. They're going to like be at the pool and do all that stuff. And then you go and have this incredible experience and you realize, wow, all you did was stay at the pool all summer. You know what I did, you know? And so it was just, and so that diversity of experiences, that diversity of understanding and different perspectives. I spoke with a gentleman a couple of years ago. He was from Mexico and was working on a marketing project targeted towards Latinos in the States. Anyway, we got in this conversation. We were like sharing stories of families and cross-cultural things. And I said, yeah, you know, it was so fascinating. You sort of feel this like 50-50 pull. Are you more American? Are you more this? And he said, no. This was very fascinating because he said, you're 100% of both of them. And I thought about that and I thought, you're right. Like you're 100% of all of these things. So like you're 200%, right? Because you have all of this perspective. And at some point, you know, when you go back to Sri Lanka, it's sort of probably like, where are you from? Like you're not exactly native anymore. And then when you're here, they say, where are you from? You know, and so you get both of that. Every time I go to Macedonia, even as a kid to now, even though I speak perfect, the first question I would get is, where are you from? And I'd be like, well, can I be from here? But there's just a difference, you know? So you're 100% of both of those things, which I thought was a very valuable lesson for me to sort of broaden my understanding. Anyway, so we would go back every summer. And still, you know, you have that perspective of these places, 100% of these places. And I had to answer these questions that nobody could answer for me. And one of the things was, so here you are in, you know, in American school, everyone's together, you know, from all races and all cultures and all religions. We're all going to school together in the public system. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's totally normal. And then you go to Macedonia and things are very segregated, right? So Albanians are in one area, Macedonians are in another area. So it was very parallel, but separate lives. And so my question was, why, right? Like, why can't it be integrated? Why can't there be this sort of norm? That's the wrong word, but just the integration. Like, why is it so separate all the time?
Yeah.
And so that was my focus. And every time I would ask the question from my family or friends in Macedonia, they would just say, well, that's just the way it is. And I'm like, well, no, there's got to be more to it. So going to do my research, again, that idea of what's the foundation, what's my goal, what am I trying to understand? So that those questions really sort of that continued questioning and curiosity for me sort of leads me through everything that I've done. And the one thing that I learned was everybody really wants the same thing, right? They want a job, they want security, they want all of those things. But because resources are so complicated, if one person doesn't get something, the immediate blame goes on the other, right? Which is unfortunate, and then that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway.
I love how you frame that, actually, how resources are complicated. You didn't say resources are limited, because I do think that mindset of limited is what's driving people to blame each other instead of looking at it. You know, I do a lot of mindfulness. So I do look at things about, okay, there is a abundance of opportunities. And even among like attorneys, you know, we have a lot of attorneys out there, lots of attorneys. But if you think about it, I am not, you know, like a client that's going to work with me is more likely going to come to me for what they draw to me. It's not, doesn't mean that I'm taking your client. It means that maybe you have a better client out there too. So it's just kind of reshaping, because I do think the way our school system works is a very competitive system, right? So especially to make it to graduate levels and do that, you had to be a competitive person. So you kind of get ingrained in, like, you know, I'm going to step. And it's, you know, that like it's my lane, like this mine, instead of thinking what you use describing this, the radical inclusion, which I love that word that you were talking about. You know, like, just because we call this Feminist Party, it's radically inclusive to everybody. It's not just one type of person. So why not work together? So that's what about your message that really resonated with me. So how did you first came into getting into wine? Did you always wanted a wine business? So
gosh, no. Again, it came through the curiosity channel. So I went to Michigan for undergraduate in political science, and I went to graduate school in Michigan State for journalism, and then I had the Fulbright scholarship. And so then when I returned, and I had an amazing job on campus at Michigan State where I wrote for an agricultural magazine.
Yeah.
Yet in order to keep the job, you had to be a student. And I loved the job. So I was like a forever student. So I was just taking all of these classes, like, oh, I'll take this, I'll take art history, because I loved this job. And it was writing about science and agriculture for the layperson. So I got to translate all this research for the everyday human to sort of be like, oh, I understand why X is doing that research. Anyway, I loved it. So I extended my graduate school for a very long time. And at some point I thought, I gotta be an adult and figure this out. So I moved to California, what I thought would be very temporary. I was like, oh, I'll be here for the summer. I'll finish my thesis. And then I was applying for jobs and NGO jobs in Eastern Europe. You know, I thought that I would live in a border village between Albania and Macedonia, or, sorry, it's really loud outside.
Yeah, we had to work with what we have, right? Like I try not to.
So I thought I would live in this border village. I was sort of applying for all these jobs. I was going to find the template for world peace. And then I stayed in California for 6 months, 8 months. And I just thought, this is pretty amazing. And so I just kept finding ways to stay. I finished my thesis. And so then I just ended up odd jobs here and there, writing for different publications, just kind of piecing together. And then in 2004, I helped plant a small vineyard. And that was it. That started making wine in the garage. And so that was in 04, was sort of the first vintage, and then tending to this vineyard and making wine in the garage and doing a million other things. You know, I had a flower shop, I worked in garden, I did all kinds of things. But writing and curiosity was always the main through line. You know, then at some point I had to decide, you know, I kept getting deeper and deeper. There wasn't a strategy. It wasn't like, oh, this is my plan. In 5 years, this will happen. In 10 years, this will happen. And then I'll do X, Y, Z. I knew nothing about the industry. I look back now and I think, wow. I always say, if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Just because you think of, when you see the challenges in front of you, right? So this is another thing for entrepreneurs. When you see all of the challenges in front of you, at some point they seem somewhat insurmountable. And you think, can I ever possibly cross that threshold? And yet, if you don't know how daunting that challenge is going to be, you just keep working to cross it. And you keep finding ways and finding avenues to cross that threshold to get to the next line. And I'm not saying that being unprepared is a good tip at all, but at some point you talk about that idea of risk assessment, right? So what is the risk? And so I always say, for me, when I committed, so I fully committed, no other job in 2011, I was like, this is it, I'm gonna give it a go. And I would say, like, there was no plan B. It wasn't like, oh, if this doesn't work, I'll go do X. Like, everything was focused on this. And so that true and pure commitment helps guide you, I think, you know? And again, it's not for everybody. Like you said, like some people don't want that risk and the responsibility of being an entrepreneur. I mean, you know what that means.
I think that's the thing. I think, like you said, when you look at something from zoom out view, sometimes it's overwhelming. But once you start taking steps, you realize it's kind of like climbing a big mountain. You just have to trudge along. And sometimes you had to walk around things. Sometimes you may have to turn around a few steps and take another way up, because, you know, and you don't know, but I think the worst thing is not to try, though.
Yeah.
Like if you see the mountain and you say, hey, hell no, I'm not doing this, turn around, go, then you're not growing. So at least in my point.
You're totally right. Then you're completely not growing, right? And you're not learning. So we've been, you've been hearing this concept a lot about failure or not failure, or you should fail really quickly, or whatever that thing is.
Fail forward.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to fail. And yet, struggle is different, right? Working hard, struggle, commitment, doing all these things, that's a different concept of failure. Learning from the challenges, and just being prepared, you know, it's complicated. And wine is very complicated. I mean, that's the thing with all business. All of the things that you think, if you made a checklist of what do you think would be X, Y, Z, or what do you think would happen, you know, at some point you're going to miss like a quarter of the things that you thought. And so just always being open and ready to sort of pivot. We talk about pivoting a lot right now too.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do we do it? So
I feel like we're already getting into some of your tips maybe. So maybe we could start with the tips and then kind of weave in some of these.
Okay.
How about that? Okay.
Great.
So your number one tip, what would you like to share?
You have to commit and want to work really, really hard. right? If you're going to be an entrepreneur, right? If you are going to say, I want, you know, Saturdays all to myself. I don't want to take any emails on Sunday. I'm not going to answer the phone, X, Y, Z. You can create those parameters. And yet I sort of believe, like, always say yes, right? Particularly in the beginning, like always say yes, always experience everything you can possibly experience. Because once you say no, it's very easy to say no. And at some point you're going to have to say no. But until you say yes a lot to a lot of different experiences in your area, you know, you're going to meet people, you're going to learn one nugget of information that you never possibly imagined that you would learn. So number one is sort of always say yes.
Okay. So I do think that is one of those things where, you know, like last year, I just completed my 1-year anniversary of launching my practice. So you're right. I mean, I've been saying yes to a lot of things. And like this year right now, I'm evaluating some of the responsibilities I have taken on last year, which things I said yes to. What is the benefits of it? What is my time cost? Because I think as an entrepreneur, I think the most valuable thing you have, one of the most valuable things is your time. You know, and
it's the most complicated thing to evaluate and monetize, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
what's the price tag on that? Everyone has an individual answer. It's very hard to do that, you know.
Absolutely. And I do want to hear the story about this wine in particular, so I'm not going to forget that. So number 2, the tip for
let me always answer your phone. Give me 1 second.
Yes, absolutely. While she runs out to answer the phone, I will say that this Feminist Party wine is a blend. It's have 50% Grenache, 20% Syrah, and 30% Mourvedre. Okay. I think I'm going to ask her to explain that because I mispronounced it. I was just talking to the channel and I was explaining what the Feminist Party wine blend is, and I definitely butchered the last, the 30%. Mourvedre. There we go. So, yeah. Okay. We are back. So you just shared your first tip, and we were going to get to your second tip.
So the first tip had a connection. The first tip was always say yes. The second tip is be committed fully, right? Be committed fully, and don't, how do I say this? Always keep your ears and eyes open, right? Okay. So regardless of where you are, you're a lawyer, so let's say you're going to go to Florida to go to Miami for the beach, right? Whatever it is. Even you said it at the start of the conversation, you're like, I'm a lawyer, I have to do a disclosure, blah, blah, blah. But like that brain and that perspective is always there. So always use that perspective, right? So as a winemaker, I go somewhere and I think about hospitality, I think about greeting, I think about customer interaction, I think about presentation in the location. Even though I don't go in, you know, with that mindset, it's always around you. So all those little tips that you can always sort of think about, incorporate, learn from, your tentacles open. That's number 2. Number 3 would also be something that I'm not very good at, just because my brain and my energy are so amped all the time. Find time for yourself.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
You know, and so for me, I sort of take every morning, regardless of the time of year, even if it's just 15 minutes, right? Something that feeds me. It can be anything for anybody. Like for me, it's sort of 10 minutes of breathing or 10 minutes of jump rope. Or if I have a time to go for a run, I'll like go for a run. It's just sort of that moment of my time. You know, I have coffee, I can sort of settle in, check some emails, just kind of assess what's going to happen today. You can get a vibe in the morning. And so then when you enter your day, you're prepared. But you've had that moment of sort of you, so now you get stronger and kind of face the day. Because then the day gets crazy, and then to do something, for me at least, to navigate other things at the end of the day, like, it's too complicated.
Well, I do mindfulness meditations, and that's part of it, is that, like you said, just sit in stillness. So take a walk and just, I'll listen to a podcast. Like, when I used to have a full-time job and work for like firm or company, I actually used to listen to like TED Talks or podcast while I get ready in the morning, not news, because I wanted that energy of like creativity, kind of like, mixing it in the morning so that I am in that mindset, and on some days I will listen to motivational talks because I needed that. If it's like a rough week, you just need like, and I think that goes to anybody, even now, right? Like if you're having a tough month or year, whatever it is, and it's a pandemic, so it's obviously almost feel really long. So I think we could all use whatever that recharges your like soul spirit.
So I mean, in that perspective, I think my last two tips, and we can expound on them further, would be, oh my God, they just left my brain. Ask for help. Always ask for help.
Yeah.
And don't stand in your way.
Okay.
Right? So asking for help, sometimes we're too afraid to ask for help. If we ask a question, we might look as if we don't know the answer. We don't know how to combat the challenge. We don't know how to face on the issue. And so we're afraid to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And so that you can lose a lot of time that way if you don't just sort of ask for help from a trusted source or a not trusted source. I think people surprise us more often than we think to sort of assist when called upon. I think that's very important. And then, the idea of don't stand in your way, I think also comes to the idea of don't assume certain things. Don't assume people don't want to work with you. Don't assume someone doesn't like you. Don't assume someone does like you. Don't assume your product's not valuable. Don't assume, like, all of these assumptions that we, kind of go through of, oh no one's interested, or oh, no, I can't do that, or I'm not too sure. And you have, again, that idea of that risk, like how you have to try it and you have to be open, regardless of what might come, but whatever it is, you're going to completely learn from that experience, and so I think primarily it's that idea of being able to take risks, being able to take extreme risks, and then being able to step back and say, like you were talking about your time management, or, was that valuable? At some point, we're all going to naturally come to an idea and say, you know what, doing XYZ for XYZ was not valuable with my time. But I learned that now going forward, this is what does make me happy, right? This is how I can most benefit my clients. And so that everybody is really mindful about what the experiences are when you enter and what the outcome will be. I think sort of giving all the information up front is really interesting. And kind of navigating all this stuff, one of the biggest challenges for me to sort of fully understand is the impact right now of social media, right? Yeah. I don't have a grasp on it, and I was being stressed out about it. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know. And, again, that time management, resources. So I seeked out the consultancy help from a woman in town, and I thought, let's meet and let's see what we have. And I went in thinking this is not for me, and then I thought the things that I learned from that half-hour meeting were just extraordinary, right? And so I think always ask for help and be mindful is really important.
I think going back to some of your tips, actually, part of the story I heard about this wine, I would like you to share how you came about the Feminist Party wine, because I think it goes on to some of the being open, like you were talking about. So,
Well, so you think about the idea, we talked about immigration, we talked about all these cultural differences. And so I think really importantly, sometimes again, we feel as if we learn something about, you know, we talk about these words of like integration and assimilation and all of these things, right? And yet, the more I learn about another human, another way, another culture, another religion, the better I am, right? I don't become that thing. I also just learn to greater understand and have empathy for sort of that experience, right? And so the Feminist Party is the Feminist Party because I identify as a woman, and so I'm here to sort of lead the party, and yet everyone's invited. Like, it's all about radical inclusion, all walks, all people, all cultures, everything. Because when we work together, we create great things, you know? And so it's, you know, it's the wine blend of 3 different grapes. Everything else that I do for the other brands, Casa Dumetz and Clementine Carter, are very singular experiences, one single grape or one vineyard and one grape. And so there's a very pure sort of expression of what that thing translates. And so the Feminist Party is the only blend of grapes that we do of different grapes. And I didn't make up this blend. I can't like take responsibility or credit for the blend. It's a very common blend in Rhone varietal wines, as we say. But, you know, I have the pieces and they worked and I loved the idea. And I was very resistant to it in the beginning, which has nothing to do with my resistance to radical inclusion. But again, staying out of your own way, I was on one focus and I never thought I wanted to do a blend. And then a number of years ago, a friend was like, oh, just try it. Just put it together and see what happens. And I kind of begrudgingly put it together thinking, oh, it's not gonna be very good. I'll show you. We put it together and we tasted it and we thought, oh, oops, it's pretty good. So again, right, asking for help, being open to new ideas. Doesn't mean it shifts who you are or what your focus is. It just sort of interweaves itself into that.
And it expands, I think. It's expand the experience. So I think that's what, when you were talking about, you know, being open and allowing things to kind of flow once you commit to something, it's kind of that whole idea of surrender and let it unfold. And you do take steps, you do make decisions, and, you know, but yet you're also letting things kind of, you know, surprise you and, you know, learn from it as you're going along.
I think you just hit on such an amazing word that kind of sums it all up, is that idea of surrender. I'd never thought of it that way, but as soon as you said it, you know, surrender doesn't mean giving up.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't mean that you've lost. You know, we have all these different contexts in which we use this word. And yet when you truly say, I'm surrendering to this experience, right, you take it in and you still control it, but you're open to it. So I think with any entrepreneur, I mean, you really, 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 really need to just say, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to take all my tools and surrender this experience and just sort of go in full-heartedly. So
commit to it. Yeah. I love also the layout in the back of your shop. So, you know, I think that's the other thing what I like about like wineries and these kind of restaurants that are associated with wineries, because I feel like they're almost like another part of the creativity that comes together. Like you have the agricultural aspect, blending of things, and then you have the artwork, the creative, the looks, and then you also have like, you know, the restaurants usually have like the paintings and other like jewelry kind of stuff. That's what really fascinating to me about like wineries and how you put all of that together.
Well, I feel, you know, particularly for us, because our market is primarily direct to consumer, right? We do ship and people can buy online and we sell in other states, but 90% of our market is people coming in, having the experience with us. And I always say, and that's why hospitality is so valuable. Like I mentioned about social media, you know, I sort of pushed it away until someone said to me, no, social media is an extension of your hospitality. And so right then and there, I thought, oh my God, I'm not paying attention to a percentage of hospitality, which I'm all about hospitality. And I thought, wow, you really need to reshape your understanding of what this is. And so when people come in any environment, I spend so much time here, I want them to feel as if they've entered my home, as if they've entered another extension of this whole area. And, you know, one of our main, if not the main, we want to have fun. We want to taste beautiful things. It's really about education, right? We want to educate people on what we do, why we do it. You know, one of the main things we spend our time thinking about and navigating is we spend every second of our lives trying to understand and learning and navigating about wine, right? In the vineyards and this vintage and what's happening and last vintage and labels and glass and all these things. So we spend all of our time in this environment. And yet you as a consumer shouldn't have to know my logistics for the bottling stuff or when the grapes came in, like all that stuff is all part of it. So the tasting experience is all part of it. And so if that's done right, then you sit down to have a tasting, it should be totally evident in the glass and in the experience.
Exactly. And it's an appreciation for all the work that you put behind to it, because it's that suspension of disbelief that you have with like movies, right? If it's done right, you get completely like, you know, into it and you kind of forget.
Totally.
So I think that's the whole experience too. So I end my interviews always asking my people who are joining me, what do they do for their like mindfulness, that practice? So something that you do that make you happy, that you know you're bringing back into center kind of practice. Oh, do you have something like that?
I mean, again, my practice is sort of those times in the morning, particularly my running, right? I'm not a fast runner. I'm not an ultra marathoner. I'm not like a crazy super athlete, right? I do it for the psychology. I would say it's my doctor's visit in the morning, right? It's for sort of my check-in, my visit. It's sort of become very routine, like drinking coffee or whatever, having breakfast. It's just sort of part of the day. And so that moment, that time in the morning settles me in and makes me feel strong physically and emotionally. And even though I listen to headphones and I listen to NPR probably in the morning when I'm running, I'm only halfway there because it's really like all happening here and you're outside. And so that's, again, whatever that thing is, to give you that space. And listen, it's a luxury to be able to take that. I totally know. But for me, I would always, and I don't know if this is something that people should, you know, practice, but I would rather sort of sleep 30 minutes less and have that than, you know, because I know like what I would gain from it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I used to do only 6 hours of sleep. I know everybody says out there what they say. And for me, so that 6 hours and plus time to go to the gym in the morning was so important, because that's how I control my anxiety, stress. And so I think whatever works for you, your body tells you. I mean, of course, listen, if you can get 8 hours, fabulous, right? And there are times in the week I will sleep in. But, you know, it's how you schedule your, you know what, go with the flow.
I love sleep.
I do have a crash weekend sometime, you know, once a month or so, where I will actually sleep in like until like 10, 12. That's because, you know, during the week I was getting up at like 4 a.m., going to the gym and then get to work by like before like 9. So, you know. But Sonja, thank you so much for spending time. I know you're really busy, so with all the business stuff, and I'm gonna put all the information below, just so for those who want to know. The Casa Dumetz is located in Santa Barbara County in California.
In Los Alamos, the little town of Los Alamos.
And it's you probably will be, when this all get done, you guys have tours and everything on website, I'm
Yep.
guessing. Yeah, and then
Right now we're in, so this is May 21st, right?
yeah,
Wineries are considered tourism, so we are phase 3 of opening.
opening.
And so it's good. I mean, safety is number one priority, and comfort
Yeah.
level is very important. So we are naturally kind of easing into sort of what that new hospitality strategy will look like. So we're thinking sometime in June, ish. And then we'll start again, vineyard tours, everything's outside. It'll be really exciting. So
That will be nice actually, and probably smaller group, like not big group, so it's a good time. And then you could order these from your website, and I actually got mine from a local. If you're in San Diego, you could get it from Splash Wine. That's how we met.
yeah,
So yeah. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your journey. I really appreciate it, and I'm gonna put all the links about Sonja and how to connect with her on below this video, including your Instagram. Probably, do you have Instagram?
Yep.
No. Okay.
I do. I've had it. It just hasn't been that good. So
I know mine isn't that great either, so I'm still learning. So yeah, and have a great summer, and hopefully I will see you at another event, Sonja.
Please come out when you're
and
able
in
to.
person. Absolutely, absolutely.
I'd love to host you, please. You have all my information. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, and thank you everybody for joining us. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And see you with the next video. Thank you.
Thank you.